Fire Engineering Radio and to our show, Pride and Ownership, the Love for the Job. I'm your host, Chief Rick Lasky. We got a new administration headed to Washington. However you voted, and that's great. And all you can hope for the fire service side is whoever is in the big house there, that they support the fire service, and that's everything. Everything we're trying to do, whether it's through the U.S. Fire Administration, FEMA, Homeland Security efforts, everything. There's so many different areas and levels, and all you can hope for as a firefighter, as an officer, as a chief, is that we continue to receive the support, maybe even more than before. Who knows? That we need to continue to keep our people safe and do the best job we can for those we've put our right hands up to and swore to protect. So hopefully things will move in a good direction there, and we'll keep moving. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit today about something that we want. I guess we want to get into talking about more about responsibility on the fireground and with our company officers and with our firefighters and that. And today I've asked my best buddy back on the show, Battalion Chief John Salka. I know pretty much if you don't know him, you've been hiding out somewhere, because John's been in the business for 30 years, pretty much all that with the FDNY. He's currently working as the battalion commander in the 18th Battalion in the Bronx. Prior to that, and not only just on engines and trucks and squads and rescues, he served as captain on Engine 48 when they were running like 5,000 calls a year. He's all over the country, all over pretty much the world, teaching leadership, teaching a variety of topics. You'll read his stuff in fire engineering. You'll read it in Firehouse. He's the best-selling author, First In, Last Out: Leadership Lessons in the New York Fire Department. We were partners with the HOT program for firefighter safety and survival, teaching the Get Out Alive and Saving Our Own programs. He's on the FDIC advisory board, writes for all the magazines, and is a big supporter of fire engineering in Penwell, and was also the recipient of Fire Engineering's Training Achievement Award a couple years back. So, and that's just if you know him, that's just a portion of his background, his resume. But those are definitely worth mentioning. John, welcome, buddy.
Good morning, my friend. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, hey, you know what? Every time we get this going, we run out of time. We could talk for days. It's kind of it's kind of like the fun we have when we travel together and teach and bounce around and end up either at a restaurant or at a hotel or
up all night talking.
At the end of the class and everything. But hey, you were one of the speakers at Fire Engineering's weekend in Fort Worth. You saw the program, and who they had there both days in a packed room. What did you think of that whole setup and everything?
Oh, I thought it was great. As always, I was happy to be invited and be a part of it. Always nice to go down your way, down to Texas, and the folks at Fort Worth, the whole audience there was fantastic. Actually, I was quite surprised. There were lots and lots of people there that weren't even locals that had actually traveled in. Some people even flew in. There were some people got on an airplane, came to see us. So I had a great time. Of course, it went off without a hitch, which is always nice when you're in the presenting business, when you're in the business of doing seminars and lectures. It's nice to have all the microphones working and the lights working and the chairs and everything coming out well, which it did. And of course the other speakers were great too. I think the folks that came down to attend got a real treat.
Well, the neat thing about the fire service, John, is we've been there where all of a sudden the microphone goes dead, or they got to change the battery out, or the sound. Sometimes it's poor planning where you're at, or you've got a hotel or a complex trying to support you that doesn't have the necessary needs. But the neat thing about the fire service is everybody's pretty. We're probably the most flexible people and adaptable people out there. But you're right. Everything. I'm telling you, it just clicked. And Diane Feldman was saying, Diane with Fire Engineering, she says, these students, John, she goes, they are just eating this up. They're just, we had everybody, buddy. We had from chiefs down to rookies, back all the way up the ladder. She said, they were clamoring. They came back from their breaks, on time, which is a good sign. The room was filled. People stayed till the very end for the most part. It was just that's a Saturday, Sunday.
And another thing that you could see is during the seminar, during the presentations, and of course I try and do it myself, and I know you do it, and lots of other guys do it as well. I was trying to elicit a little input from the audience, from the folks that are there, and these guys and gals did not hesitate at all. Everybody stepped right up when we had a question. Who does this? Who does that? Who's had a leadership challenge similar to this or similar to that? And people were happy to raise their hand and voice their opinion on what was going on, which always makes the class a little bit more interesting, because now you get the perspective of more than just the guy standing up at the podium. You get to hear what the people in the audience have gone through as well. So that was good.
And how do you like to set up at the end? I mean, that's kind of a first in a lot of places, where you have all the instructors at the end of the day up on the stage or the platform, and the open mic kind of roundtable thing. I mean, we could have done that all day, to be honest.
Yeah,
but,
and again, and that was as good as it was because of the audience. You can't even do an open mic roundtable unless you have a good audience that's willing to stand up and ask some good questions, and maybe not even afraid to ask one that's got a little, got some teeth in it, and they did. They asked a couple of good questions that day, and of course, I felt like we were sitting up there for 10 minutes. I think we were up there for much longer than that.
Oh, yeah.
It's another opportunity for you to jump around on some subjects that maybe didn't get hit during the seminar that guys still have questions on.
Well, and how many times are you at the end of the day, and you're either having to run to catch a flight or whatever, or these guys and gals have daycare they're worried about with their kids, or they got to get back to the firehouse, and there's never really enough time, and they try to do an email later, or they try to call you. I think it's kind of like what we're doing with the 5-alarm leadership, for all intents and purposes, the part 2, preparing to command, we're calling it, where we spend the last 2 hours with ask them the questions, and it's just, we could do that for all day too. It's kind of safe. It gives an opportunity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's a great element. I don't know that it necessarily fits at every single seminar, but the ones that I participated in, I always thought were fantastic.
Oh, and I'm telling you, buddy, it's just, there's some exciting stuff out there when you listen. And I had Eddie Buchanan on the last show, and I know you love Eddie as well as I do. And leading with attitude is what he just pushes. That's I think the name of his leadership company. And Eddie's all over the place. In fact, John, you know how weird it is. I'm out in Seattle. I get off the airplane there to go do a lecture in Olympia for some. I mean, like you and I talk about, every state we go to is a home run with some great folks. I'm walking, heading to baggage claim, and who passes me in the Seattle airport but Eddie Buchanan from Hanover, Virginia. And we end up talking for like a half hour, outside the gate there, inside the terminal. It's neat, this circle that we run with these guys that love the job. We were talking about that, how fortunate we are to run with people that really do love the job, and that's when we're sitting around and we're visiting in hotel rooms and restaurants. That's what we're talking about. I even told everybody, John, how you and I, here's the battalion commander from the Bronx and chief of Louisville, and heck, even Chief Burns from Dallas. They get a high-rise fire in Fort Worth, and Eddie wanted to go, but he was teaching yet, so Diane grabbed him, by the arm and told him, "You can't go." And here we are running down the street going to check out a high-rise fire.
Oh, right, during the seminar, yeah, that was actually pretty funny. Yeah. That's what we do. We do that all the time.
Oh, and when you go places, John, right, and people want to show you their firehouse, their antique rigs, what they've got for training props, and there's a lot of pride there, but just it's fascinating, and that's the stuff we get into. That's the stuff.
It's funny. You mentioned seeing Eddie Buchanan, and then after we were all together down in Fort Worth, several days later, I went to Florida. I was down there with the IAFC, with the International Association of Fire Chiefs, doing a program, and there's Eddie. He walks in. He's doing a presentation the day after I did my presentation. We were out to dinner one night together down there, just several days after being in Fort Worth. So it was, like you said, it's a small world. All the guys that are out there on the lecture circuit, traveling around to different places, seeing each other all the time. It's great.
Well, and I'm getting excited. You and I have been doing this company officer training for such a long time. Part of the overall leadership deal, but this company officer academy that you and I put together is just. It's incredible. It's just we're having a ball with it. I think we're making a difference, John. We're doing things for people that really aren't being taught pretty much anywhere, unless you're lucky to grab a program here and there. It's not really out there. I'm enjoying it. I'm loving doing it. And hey, you did a program, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, called Fireground Responsibility, but. I kind of want to hold off with that right now. You and I have been doing Get Out Alive and Saving Our Own for a long time. And I'll say it openly here, the two programs that really got things rolling when it comes to RIT and Mayday training and firefighter survival training. But and we've talked about before when we've had you on the show the impacts of those programs. I know you're reviewing, and you've been for years, the line of duty deaths that are occurring out there, and with NIOSH and doing some work with them, and the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and the reports. How valuable do you feel the information is when you get your hands on one of those NIOSH reports or NFPA report or a U.S. Fire Administration report on a line of duty death?
Oh, that's tremendous. They're tremendous tools. And like I tell guys when I go out and do seminars, whether it's my Fireground Responsibility or any of the other ones, if I end up on that subject talking about these line of duty death reports, here you have a piece of paper, or obviously a report. It's not just one piece of paper, but here you have a document that somebody else has put all the time and energy into, and investigative efforts, and now they put a report out with all the particulars of the incident and where it happened and when it happened and what attempts were made to save the firefighter, and then they go through with obviously the contributing factors, the things that contributed to a particular firefighter dying in a line of duty, and then they take the final step and give recommendations. And so right off the bat, and I'm talking not exclusively, but primarily about the NIOSH reports. And anybody who's listening to us now, you can go to NIOSH right online and go to the Firefighter Fatality Investigation Program, and they're all listed there. They don't do one for every single line of duty death, but most of them are done. And obviously, as we all know, there's over 100 years. So you go back 5 years, you're looking at almost 500 reports that you can pull out, and it's a lesson. It's a training document. Obviously, you can look and read the particulars of the unfortunate incident where a firefighter is killed, but then you can take those learning points and those contributing factors, and they all become tactical training sessions. If they had five contributing factors, and one of them that the guy didn't manage his air, didn't know how much air he had, was unsure how to operate his SCBA. Maybe another factor was they went inside somewhere like a commercial building without a search rope for a serious fire operation. Now you take each one of those, and now you have the possibility, certainly, in the material for a full-scale drill or training session. And we're talking about each line of duty death usually has several, 3, 4, 5, 6 different contributing factors. So this is it's a wealth of information that everybody can use. We're pulling out of a pretty gloomy place. A line of duty death, is a pretty sad event. But what better way to learn than by the mistakes of others and by the oversights of others that people have committed? And now you can go and look at it, talk to your firefighters about it, and say, look, and if you don't do it, here's what can happen. You can end up like this firefighter or like this fire officer ended up. So, those are very, very valuable tools for training. And sometimes you're sitting around your desk at night. You're a battalion chief or a district chief or a company captain, a lieutenant somewhere in some city across America. You're sitting in your office doing a night tour. You know what? Go on to NIOSH, print one of those reports out. And I always suggest printing them so you can put it down on the desk and read it at your leisure. You may learn some lessons just reading the report over a course of 45 minutes. So they're very, very valuable. And
they're free.
Absolutely,
they're free. I mean, most of this stuff, there used to be with some of the agencies a subscription fee, but like the U.S. Fire Administration, you can go to their report.
Right. And NIOSH is
library.
You go to NIOSH, you can download and print anything that they have, and it's all free.
And here's another time, John, we've talked about, and I mentioned this the other day too, is just how you're always saying, and I agree with you 100%, that if you're a company officer and you're not training your people every day, if you're not taking 10 minutes of your busy day, just a simple 10 minutes, and train them in something, you're not doing your job. It could be pouring down rain, blizzard, whatever. You go to your computer, you can print those off, print them off at home before you get to the firehouse. If you're doing your roll call right, maybe you print it off the ship before as something when you sit down for coffee, when everybody's there, you can sit at the kitchen table and discuss it with the troops. You can, and that can turn into a 3-hour
absolutely
dry erase board presentation. And we do it here with the line of duty death book report drill. I've talked about that before, where each station is at one point or another, the training chief, Scott Thompson, will come and say, okay, Station 6, here's your NIOSH report, here's the fire engineering article on this line of duty death. Your job is your requirement is to come up with a 20-minute presentation. You're going to describe the incident, you're going to list the contributing factors, and you're going to tell us how that's not going to happen in Louisville. How are we going to prevent that? And you could do it off the back of a napkin at each kitchen table of every firehouse, or you could do it in the training room with PowerPoint. And it's already had it saved one of my captains' lives, John.
Mm-hmm.
just by going back over something that happened before. The information's there.
Right. And like you said, somebody else has gone through the effort and the expense of doing the investigation and accumulating the information and producing a nice report. They've already done all the hard work. Now that you just have the material available to you. Sure.
Oh, it's there. It is, and it's an incredible resource for those of you out there. I mean, just, and email one of us, call one of us, get on the internet, whatever. If you can't find it for some reason, by all means, pick up the phone call or shoot us an email. We'll be happy to connect you with those sites. John, I love. I mean, first of all, I can sit, and I know you're my best buddy, but I can sit and listen to your lectures all day. I've listened to some of them literally a couple hundred times, and it seems like I pick up something new each time. Or I've told people before, when you do train your firefighters get out alive, I tell people the story of sitting up in the auditorium checking emails when you and I are tag team and teaching somewhere, and you put up the slide with the firefighter hang out the window with the extension ladder extended, and I'm like, dag nabbit, I'm telling you, we probably have that at my department. The whole halyard being tired improperly, jeopardizing the safety of one of your firefighters, those little things, those contribute, and it's once in a while it's a kick in the ass for me to get me back as a fire chief to talk with my guys and go, okay, are we doing things right? You do a program called now Fireground Responsibility. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, because there's something in that program I want you to get to, but I mean, you and I come up with programs all the time. What makes you come up with a program that, all right, I'm going to call this with Fireground Responsibility? Well, there's got to be something that drove you to say, okay, I want to do this program.
It was. What happened was what we've just been talking about, those NIOSH reports and those line of duty death reports that you look at, and I was looking through them, and I, when I go online, I sign it to my computer, and often I'll be notified. Also, when one is released, also it'll say new line of duty death report released, and I'll click onto it and see which one it was. It might be something that was done several months ago. But anyway, I'm in a habit of reading those, and as I kept reading them, I kept noticing that not only were there contributing factors, but there were contributing people, and we don't like to talk about that too much in the fire service. We're pretty. I don't want to say we're easy on each other, but we don't like to point fingers. And most places and most firefighters and most instructors, I've even been to seminars where a particular situation or a particular incident was discussed, and the instructor goes out of their way to say, we're not making any judgments here, we're not pointing fingers at anybody, we just want to learn. And yes, we do just want to learn. That is the ultimate goal here is to learn a lesson from other people's mistakes and move on and keep our people safer. But and the big but here is sometimes you have to identify the people. And I'm not saying we're going to prosecute people. I'm not going to say we're going to try and ruin anybody's reputation or anything. But sometimes if there's a line of duty death, it's a lot easier to figure out exactly what happened when you figure out who was involved and whose shoulders some of these factors rest on. And that's pretty much what I do in my program, that particular program, Fireground Responsibility. I really talk about whose responsibility is it. And the one particular one of the several line of duty deaths that I discussed was a young firefighter from New York City that died back in 2003, and the contributing factors, the fact that they didn't use a search rope and that he became disoriented and separated from his officer, and he didn't use his radio. Certainly the firefighter that died contributed. And what we do is we list the potential contributors, like the company officer, the chief in charge of the operation, the involved firefighter, and then maybe any other firefighter on the scene. We list those four general categories, and as I go through the individual factors, the contributing factors, by the time I get done talking about a particular factor, which I do one at a time, I generally ask the audience. I poll the audience to say, okay, well, whose shoulders does factor number 2 rest on? The fact that they didn't use the search rope. And a lot of hands will go up, or somebody will say, well, that's pretty much the company officer's responsibility. And I'll say, absolutely. So give him a mark, give him a hash mark next to his name, and let's move on to the next factor. Now I also make it a point of saying it's not solely on his shoulders, although it's his responsibility to deploy a search rope or to go in or not to go in or to make those decisions. I said, don't think that a young firefighter can't yell to his officer, hey, Lieutenant, should we use the search rope at this job? You may prompt the guy to say, oh, yeah, Billy, grab the search rope. That's a great idea. So just because he decides not to use it, and although it's his responsibility, that's one thing. But as a young firefighter, you may still be able to to correct something like that at the scene of a fire, even though it's not on your shoulders. But I don't want to get too far off the subject. So the subject is we go through 3 or 4 or 5 more factors, and they're all over the gamut. They're things like the firefighter not calling for help on the radio for whatever reason he did or did not do that, and that rests on his shoulders. And then maybe the chief makes a decision about.
And John, let me interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead.
Because we've talked about this over and over again, and first of all, you make a great point that we don't tend to really want to. We're always worried about placing blame, hurting somebody's feelings. Let's just say it, all right, and whatever, or liability, and the other people that wear the other uniforms in the public safety side, if you will, the cops. They have no problem. They show videos. They show how somebody walked up, improperly on a car and got shot, and all these different things.
And nor does the military. Military comes out with some pretty hard, biting reports when they have a line of duty death or when they have a major negative incident. People's heads do roll, and I'm not suggesting we want to go there, but other agencies and other departments sometimes don't have a problem identifying who made the mistake, who made the misjudgment.
Well, and you're starting to see it more and more, buddy. You're starting to see people getting sued. You're starting to see it. You can read it on the websites and the newspapers. You're starting to see fire officers and chiefs getting sued for different things that didn't go right at fires by families. But what I want to get to here, though, before we moving down the road, why is it? And we've done this for thousands and thousands of hours of training that goes on. Why can't we get firefighters? Why do you think firefighters? What's the whole hesitancy to call for help? Let's just talk about that real quick. When we're talking about this part of your program. How many times, whether it was Bryson Street with Pittsburgh with the guys there that didn't call out for help. I mean, and we could go on and on. Good folks there, good people. But why, John? Why is it they've got portable radios, and we either call too late? Is it because we're in denial that this is really going on, or?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on. I think, and they're not all bad. I think one of them is that firefighters generally are can-do kind of people. We usually. If you got something broken, you're walking past the firehouse, wheel a bicycle in or push your car over to the firehouse or bring your iPod over there, and some fireman sitting at the house watch or sitting on the apparatus floor probably take a screwdriver to it and fix it for you. So firefighters are pretty handy guys. We like solving problems. So even when we have a serious problem, a tactical problem during a fire, in the smoke, in the IDLH, somewhere above the fire, I think most guys try and fix the problem first. Most of us in the fire service probably try and locate where we are before we call a mayday that we're lost. If something happens and our SCBA starts to malfunction, we probably try to stop and figure out what the problem is. Is it something I can reach back and tighten? Is it something I can put my hand over and prevent too much air from escaping before we give a mayday? So sometimes I think, and I'm not knocking it, I think in some ways it's a positive thing that sometimes we hesitate to go right to a big mayday declaration, because something small that happens you might be able to fix. Even disorientation. I've told guys that a million times. You could be lost for 3 seconds and then back up 3 steps, find the newel post on the stairway or the doorway and say, okay, I'm not lost anymore. Rather than just giving a mayday the first moment that you think you might be lost. So I think that's one reason people don't call for help, is sometimes they're trying to solve their problem. And the unfortunate thing is that leads sometimes into a negative secondary effect, which is they get so tied up doing that. They get so busy trying to solve their problem that then they forget to call Mayday, and they're so busy trying to find their way out or trying to fix their air leak on their SCBA that a minute or two goes by. Then suddenly they're taking their last breath, and that's when they realize, holy cow, I never gave a Mayday.
And that's a great answer, because how many times do guys ask you, I can't believe they didn't call for help? And I've said it. You and I both said it, and you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And we've talked for years about when firefighters, when we end up lost or go down, we go through this, everybody, the incident commander, I think it happened at Wallbounds, correct me if I'm wrong, where when the electrical guy or the power company guy came down and said, you just had like 20 firefighters fall through the roof. And he's like, no, that's not, you're almost in denial.
Right.
No, this can't be happening. No, this isn't happening. This isn't happening. No, and you're right. If I just make this left-hand turn, I'm out of here and I don't have to call for help. I think sometimes there's the pressure that I think we beat up on guys. I've said before, there's nothing wrong with going with urgent or going with emergency traffic or declaring a mayday and surviving. It's almost like you'll sit there and guys will read their buff pages. They'll go, hey, so-and-so has a mayday. he got out. It's like, God, well, I hope you're going. You should be saying, all right, good, he got out. Don't be disappointed.
Well, not only is there nothing wrong with it, that's the designed ending. That's the designed conclusion of a mayday or an urgent or an emergency traffic. It's designed to end positively. If done properly and early enough, and you have the proper resources and people that are trained to handle it on the scene, every mayday should end up with a positive ending. So given them, I've discussed this before with people too with maydays, and I don't want to go too far down the mayday road, but sort of sometimes the problem is there's not enough maydays given. If maydays were a little bit more routine, and I'm really serious about that, a little bit more routine. If everybody that got into a real mayday situation actually gave it, then we would be given maydays, acknowledging them, and solving them almost routinely. And then it wouldn't be the big deal that it is. That's another problem that maydays are a problem, is because most people that get a mayday someday after today, it'll be their first one. And after you get a couple, and I've been at fires, I've been at a number, not 10, but 5 or 6 fires where maydays were transmitted. A couple of fires I was a chief officer at the scene. A couple of fires I was the incident commander at a couple of scenes where maydays were transmitted, and they weren't big deals. Yeah, it was the biggest deal that was happening at that moment, but we still had a fire going. I still had people above the fire. I still had people on the fire floor with the hose line. So I had, several areas of concern that I had to worry about in addition to this Mayday, and all of them ended up okay. All of the firefighters were, survived that gave the Maydays for different situations. So sometimes that happens as well. So Mayday is a bigger deal, I think, to some people than it should be, because they've just never really experienced one before.
And I know when you have more than 4 hours or 2 hours to present your Fireground Responsibility program, just like when I do Firefighter Safety Survival, one of the things I know both of us bring up, and not to keep beating up on Mayday, but it is part of that program, is the fact that when the Mayday hits, and that's why you and I and our buddy Skip Coleman have taught managing the Mayday for so many years. If you think you think as a single chief officer you can control and run that fire and then drop a Mayday in there, something's going to get missed. You could be the greatest. I've had my Maydays. You have. It's incredibly difficult. It's the most stressful scene you're ever going to manage. And if you think you can run it by yourself, something's going to get missed. That's why you got to bring the help in. I was telling you about that job we had, last week, John, with the storage facility converted into all the little shops. I mean, we had one at command sitting in a car. That was me coloring all the the squares with the chief's aide, the fit. We had one in operations. We had one in the back of the building, one on both sides. We had one inside. We had one. And that's just the eyes and ears that you need to, when the Mayday does hit, that you as the incident commander can help you. Manage that incident. And not only do we not talk on the radio, I think sometimes, John, and there's been a couple of Maydays that have happened recently where if you listen to tapes, the first thing the incident commanders do is evacuate the building. And I tell people, we're firefighters. We're supposed to fight fires. Unless it's falling down on top of you or from underneath you, we're evacuating, getting everybody in the front lawn, John, in some places to go, okay, Lasky's missing. Well, oh yeah, he's inside. Well, now that fire's been, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Instead of holding your position and fighting the fire.
And as far as the other point that you just made about getting enough help to handle a Mayday or to handle a fire situation, most guys, most chiefs, most incident commanders have a difficult time running a dang house fire. They don't have enough help. Never mind add a Mayday. Complicate that by adding a Mayday to a working house fire. So, yeah, everybody.
And that's not a disrespect to those chiefs or those incident commanders. That's not a disrespect to them. That's a fact of life.
Absolutely not.
It's a fact of life. It's hard.
I mean, I don't know how many fires you do a day or a week or whatever, but every time I go to work, I end up in charge of a fire here or a fire there, and I do plenty of fires. I stand in plenty of buildings on fire, and every one that I'm at is we're always right, and this is in New York City. This is in the Bronx, where I got plenty of people, 30, 40 people come to an all-hands fire, and I'm always right at the cusp of saying, gee, if something else happens right now, I'm not going to have enough people to handle it. So if you're working with anything less than that amount of people, you should probably get some help on the way just about for every working fire you have. Whether it even just looks like a simple room and contents fire, you should get some more help on the way, whether it's mutual aid, whether it's another alarm, whether it's an individual company being special called. So getting enough help on the scene is certainly going to help you handle the Mayday.
I've been by you, and you know how we run here. We run heavy. Is there anything wrong with not using everybody you called to the scene? Is there any crime or any have you violated any policy by, I went to a second alarm and I staged the units and you know what, we actually got it and we sent them home. Right. Is there anything wrong with not using everybody?
No, you call everybody you think you might need, and you use whatever you have to need, and whatever's required, whatever you actually need, and whatever's left over, those people get a field trip. They get to come and watch your fire and listen to what's going on, and they're available in case some sudden occurrence happens. And if that doesn't happen, then they get to return back to quarters or back to their place, or go stand by in one of your firehouses while your guys continue to work there. You should never worry about calling too many people, because everybody's listening to the radio anyway, wondering what they got going down in Louisville. Holy cow, maybe they'll call us,
Well, and just when you think you're dealing with a progressive chief, like I've got one around here, you go extra alarm, and he comes back, and his comment is, we do things differently here. You always call people in to clean up your mess. I go, what are you talking about, our mess? My guys have the whole half a shift to work or whatever the deal is, and whether it's up in the cold or the heat, if those guys at that extra alarm come in and you don't end up using them except to do nothing but help you pick up hose and get your companies back in service quicker, save your backs a little bit, what's wrong with that?
Nothing, and they're generally happy to be there anyway. I got to mention one other point while we're still on the subject of calling a Mayday and using radios is, I was just at a recent seminar, just recently, where I asked in the audience, does anybody here not have a radio? Anybody going to a burning building without a radio? And a dozen hands went up in the audience. All different people, all different departments, saying, "Yeah, we don't all have radios. Just our engineers and our officer has a radio. The rest of the crew is expected to stay with the officer." And I said, "Is your chief in the room? Can you please point him out to me?" And he said, "No, chief's not here." I said, "Well, that's good that he's not here, because I got a couple of words from him. If there's any fire chief out there at all that's sending anybody into a burning building without a radio, they're out of their minds."
Start writing the grants.
That's right. That's unacceptable. Go sell your damn excursion then, and buy 3 more radios and give it to your firemen. And I don't know what else to tell you. That's inexcusable that you could send somebody into a burning building, an IDLH, and not give them two-way communications in case they get into trouble, or in case they get separated, or in case somebody else calls for help. They might be the closest guy to assist them. But
and there used to be a time where you legitimately there weren't grants, you couldn't afford it. Some of these departments I've been on where you're piecemealing your radios, but nowadays I know there's departments that there's a little over 30,000 fire departments out there. Some of them are sharing bunker gear and everything else to make they're rubbing 2 nickels together to make a quarter, that kind of thing. But with as many grants as there are, with as much as they're trying to do with the Fire Act grant, and the U.S. Fire Administration is trying to do some things. If you don't have them, you need to be working on either writing a grant, or, like you said, John, give up something in your budget. Like our rule here, you've seen it. You ask any chief officer in Louisville, any chief officer, what's our rule? Lassie's got a rule here. What's our rule? The guys come first. Yep. I don't care if I got to drive something, that is 3 different colors or whatever. I really don't care. I want my guys to have the gear, their radios, their tools, and their training. Like Eddie Enright said, the 3 F's: your firefighters first, your fire apparatus and tools second, and your firehouses third. I think sometimes we get so wound up with building these firehouses and what we're doing there with engraved and stained glass and all this stuff. Then you look at the guys and they don't have the tools and the training to do their job, but we got a nice firehouse.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's get back Fireground Responsibility, and I got you going because we started talking about why don't people call them Mayday. But you said so. One of the contributing factors is we're not calling for help for one reason, and then we were rolling from there. No search rope, some of the other things that are going on.
Right, and there's numerous situations of another one is accountability. Now, when accountability comes up in this particular program, the first question I ask everybody is, who has an accountability system? Everybody's hands generally go up. 90% of those hands, because I'll pick 2 or 3 people out and say, well, what do you have? Describe your accountability system. Well, we get the tag system, and we have two tags on the coat. We put one on the rig for the day, for the shift, or for the run if it's a volunteer firehouse, and then the second tag is collected at the command post or at the front door of the building if the crew goes inside. And of course, I make the point there that is just an accountability system, that's not really accountability. That's just an accountability system that helps you determine who's on scene, maybe who's in the building or who's out of the building. But there's an important element to accountability, and the most important element of accountability is the officer. Is the officer being accountable and maintaining accountability of his people and knowledge of where they are and what job that they're doing, and are they operating remotely from him or together with him? And again, some big departments like New York, and there are others. We have firefighters that operate remotely from the officer. They get off the rig, and it's the last time they see the officer. They're operating around the rear of the building, or they're operating on the roof of the building, sometimes by themselves for a moment or two.
Well, we've got that. We've got the outside vent man. He works by himself.
Oh, I know.
He's not freelancing. He works by himself.
And how do you maintain communication with that guy? How do you account for him if he's not standing next to you or working next to you? And of course, it's via radio. Here we are back to that radio issue. You see how these things all dovetail into each other. And you contact the guy. So I'll even ask a guy in the audience, well, give me a transmission. You're the officer. Make yourself the officer of ladder 11, ladder 11. I want you to call your roof man for an accountability check. And I'll say, just talk on the radio, and I'm going to answer you. I'm the guy. And sometimes the guy will say, ladder 11 to ladder 11 roof, and the guy will answer, and he'll say, are you okay? I say, no, that's not a valid transmission. You're not just calling him to see that he is okay. You're calling him, make use out of the transmission. So it should be ladder 11 to ladder 11 roof. The guy's going to say, 11 roof, go ahead, Lou. I said, stop right there. You don't even have to ask him another question, technically. You heard the tone of his voice. He sounded fine. He sounded able. He sounded calm. Yeah, you can throw another question at him. How are we doing up on the roof? Did you get the roof cut done yet? We're just finishing out, Lou. So now you got a couple of things done. You called him. You know he's okay. You know his radio's working. His tone of voice is good, and you got some tactical information out of him as well. The fact that he's working on a roof opening. That's four short transmissions, 2 each, and that whole series is over. And now you know your remote man is good.
And some of my guys don't know. I'll ask that, John. I'll even Sector C from command or OV from command. How you doing? Just that, and he's coming back saying, Chief, I got the back open, I got this, got that, but just like you said, it's not just to hear myself talk.
Right.
Just by, like you said it, you keyed in on something I think a lot of people miss sometimes, the tone of their voice. It's like when you show up at a fire and the incident commander is going nutsy at a fire, and you're like, God, I hope to God we don't have a mayday here. If you can't handle the fire, what else is it? It's not your house. Mm-hmm. You didn't like the thing. Stop screaming. I want you to act like you actually been to a fire before, and let's do this. But you said something about accountability that I agree with too. Is and I've said it for years, where whatever system you use, that system is like what a Halligan bar is to forcible entry. It's the tool, and if you don't use it, if you don't have people that know how to use it, if it's just something that you put on your coat, and then let's take it back, like you said, to the foundation for all that, if you will. If the company officer or the individual is not being responsible, and that means not freelancing, right? That means being responsible for yourself, being an adult, and being a good leader. Then we're going to fall. The whole accountability thing is going to fall apart.
Absolutely, and accountability is a major function of the company officer. It's a major function of command as well. But nobody's in a better place to really do accountability. Nobody's in a better place than the company officer. So the company officer has, number one, they're the closest to it. Number two, the people that they're accounting for are their people, the people that they're riding on the rig with, the people that they're sitting in the firehouse with, the people that they're training with. So the company officer is really the key. And as you and I both agree, company officer is the key to many, many, many aspects of a good fire department. But for accountability, they are the key person.
Well, and when we get to the whole Fireground Responsibility thing and trying to prevent line of duty deaths and injuries, I mean, the NFPA report just came out for 2007 firefighter injuries. 80,100 injuries occurred in the line of duty, 2007. But that's a 4% decrease. That 4% isn't huge, but it's huge to us. So, maybe, just maybe, some of this stuff that you're doing and some of the stuff that Ron Cernicki's doing, 4% decrease. Granted, 47.9% of them are on the fire ground. 4% is 4%. Maybe something, is
something's happening, right? Maybe there's some positive effect there. Well, and I just talked to Ron. Ron was there in Fort Worth with the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and we talked about line of duty deaths and how they're, unfortunately, I mean, I hate to talk to reality, but unfortunately, line of duty deaths are not going down. They're not going down, and everybody's been working a really long time, including you and I and lots of other people, to try and make that happen. But it looks like if we start paying a little bit more attention to firefighter injuries, firefighter line of duty deaths are things that happen. 100 happen. You already said it. There's 30,000 fire departments. There are thousands and tens of thousands of fire departments that are never, thank God, that are never going to have anything to do with a line of duty death. Not even a close call. But everybody has injuries. Even small fire departments have injuries. So maybe we should shift all of us a little bit of our focus away from the ultimate negative event, which is a line of duty death. Let's shift it down just one shot to fireground injuries. If we can start attacking the 80,000 fireground injuries a year and cut that down in half, boy, that would probably have even a more dramatic effect. Now we're talking about 40,000 injuries we could possibly reduce or minimize, not rather than the line of duty deaths, but the line of duty deaths thing seems to be sort of
that's the end result. That's the end result, isn't it, John?
Right.
I mean, the guys that got burned in Houston, hopefully they're going to make a full recovery. But when that happens to a firefighter, and they, you know what I'm saying? I mean, a lot of these injuries just don't end up as serious. It kind of sounds silly to say it, but the line of duty death is the end result. And I think you're right on with this. If people will concentrate more on the whole preparation, and preventing things.
Right.
And you and I do a program, right? We do a program. I've always done one, why aren't the numbers going down, and you do one, why aren't they going up? And you and I get out there, and I go, why the hell aren't they going down? We're doing all this and all this stuff, and and then you're like, well, if we're that bad, then why aren't the numbers 250 a year?
Right.
We must be doing something right. We've kept it. Unfortunately, we still want to get the number down. Don't misread that, folks, to our listeners. We want the numbers to go down. But maybe, just maybe, I mean, if we've obviously been doing something right, that the numbers aren't catapulting up to 200-300. I mean,
right.
Well, knock on wood, there's got to be something going on.
Yep, exactly.
But, all right, so you talked about a lot of different things about not calling a mayday, not staying oriented, accountability, a couple other things in the fireground responsibility, that chain of events that you always talk about.
Yeah, and what I discovered quite accidentally, because I was putting this program together really to talk about the events and to talk about the contributing factors and to talk about the training that's necessary and who's responsible and how that particular person, like the chief or the company officer or even the involved firefighter, could minimize the effect of these contributing factors. But then what I discovered, and as I just said, quite accidentally, was I looked in this one particular line of duty death, and it was one in my own job in the FDNY. There was like 6 or 7 different factors, and I started to look at each individual factor. When I got to the end of the program, what I ended up doing was putting a slide in there and saying, so how could we prevent this? How could this line of duty death have been prevented? How could this young firefighter still be alive? What could we have done? And then I went through each of the recommendations based on those contributing factors. And what I discovered was each one, let's call them 6. 6 of them were operational. One of them was something that had nothing to do with the people at the scene at all. It was about the pass alarms, which is another whole incident. But I said of the 6 events that happened, of the 6 contributing factors that occurred on the fireground, if we would have undone or properly performed any one of them, just one of them, the firefighter turns out to be alive. And I used.
And what do you use as an example? I think the slide. I looked at that. I got to my staff meeting here, John, Monday, and I was just going on about. I thought, what an incredible graphic you use.
Yeah, well,
one of your PowerPoint slides.
Well, I used a scale versus a chain, and I put a scale, and I said, if this was a scale, like a measuring scale with the 2 trays, one on each side, I said, if you put all 6 factors on one side, like 6 cubes of sugar, and you took one of them off and corrected it and brought it over to the other side and put it down, what would it do to the scale? Nothing. It doesn't do anything to the scale. There's 6 pieces of sugar on one side. You take one. Now there's 5. You put one on the other side. Now there's one on the other side. That's not going to shift the scale. The scale's not going to go down where the one piece is. You could even do 2 or 3 of them until you got it somewhere near balance. But that's not what it is at all. What it turns out it is like a chain, like an actual steel chain. Each link of the chain represents one of those individual factors, such as not stretching a search rope, or not communicating on the radio, or operating remotely and maybe under conditions that he shouldn't have been operating remotely at. Whatever the factors are. And then, again, every line of duty death has a different group of factors, but each individual factor is represented by a link in the chain. And now what we do is we fix one of them. Now we say, you know what? If they'd have used a search rope at this fire, would this young firefighter be alive? And everybody shakes their head, yes. Oh, absolutely, yeah, because if they used a search rope, then that would mean that the officer would have mentally acknowledged this was a serious fire and was dangerous. He probably would have kept that other firefighter closer. The other firefighter seeing the search rope going into use may have said to himself, gee, I better stay attached to that, and whether he held onto it physically or connected a little tagline to it before he went and operated remotely. Yeah, well, you take that one factor out and you use the search rope, and the other 6 evaporate. And if you go through each one individually, say, well, but he didn't use the search rope. But what if he would have called Mayday? Would he be alive? Yes, he would, because we would have heard him and we would have responded over to him. But he didn't. What if the firefighters that heard that guy scream would have said, hey, we heard a guy scream right over here? Right when they heard it, would he be alive? And the answer is, yes, he would be alive, because we would have responded to that call. We would have got to where they were, which was about 20 feet away from where he was, and we would have found him. And as we went through each factor, we discovered each one stands on its own as an individual opportunity to save a firefighter who was on the way to being a line-of-duty death. And then we also, by spreading it around to the different people and finding out who was responsible, we discovered that everybody at the scene of a fire, every young firefighter with a year on the job, every company officer with 10 years on a job, or every chief with 20, everybody has a stake in it, and everybody is, at one point or another, in a position maybe to be the person to save either themselves or another firefighter by simply doing something properly.
Oh, and John, I had you met Jerry Wells, one of my battalion chiefs.
Yep.
He's been out there to ride with you, and has done some articles. We've had him on the show. He did a couple articles. He did one about the driver engineer, the chauffeur, the apparatus operator, whatever you call them in your the department. And a lot of people view that position as, well, what'd you do? I was pumping, or I was the operator.
Hook up and look up. Yep.
You lose water for your people. You something happens where you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's one thing. We don't sustain with a positive water source. We don't ventilate the right time. All these things you talked about, John, we stick a fan in at the wrong time or ventilate on the wrong. We don't stay together. We don't have radio communications. We don't bring the right size line. We bring a knife to a gunfight, if you will, when it comes to the whole GPM thing. And then let's go back even further, John. You and I have talked about this. Once you get through all the contributing factors on the fireground, once you get through all of that, and okay, this happened, it was this time of day, the temperature, this way, the fire, and then you and I start looking at their training files, and you find out that they haven't received SCBA training in like 10 years.
Right.
And yet he or she got lost and ran out of air. Well, all right, there's another link in the chain. Mm-hmm. Maybe if somebody had trained that person, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the list goes on and on of how you can actually prevent this stuff. And that's why I thought that graphic you used was so incredible, buddy, because that you could have put up 100 slides with links after links after links after links mm-hmm. of all the contributing factors and how they affect. Let's take it to apparatus management at a highway scene. You've got them. You've got traffic problems just like we do, and people get mowed down.
Sure.
Let's not park our rigs properly. Let's not vest our guys up. Let's not do all these things that light up the scene. Before you know it, bad things start to happen. How could it have been prevented? You know, I mean.
And what's nice is you start to identify things that are pretty basic. Stretching a search rope at a commercial building fire. Maintaining communication with your remote firefighters via radio. These are pretty basic tactical operations. These are not advanced. These are not advanced RIT or advanced Mayday procedures. These are basic engine, ladder company SOPs that everybody should be operating and practice and drilling and training on all the time, and they should be conducting at even routine, room and contents fires at single-family dwellings. Everybody should be doing this. And now you're discovering that simply doing one basic, normal, expected to be performed tactic at a fire could be the one that saves one of your firefighters' lives. It's not extreme dramatic stuff. It's all just basic stuff.
And like I've got a great, the Texas Commission of Fire Protection, and my buddies down there are going to get mad when I say this, and they're a great organization, just like pretty much every state's got one like that. But John, I tell our folks here, you know what? I really can't remember the last time, and we do, but I can't remember the last time we've trained on salvage covers. But I can't tell you the last time we've let out with hose. We've done SCBA drill, ladder drill. We've done a live fire drill. We've done a tabletop, or we've done an actual RIT drill. I mean, the things that leading out, doing everything you need to. It's hard enough with demands on a volunteer's lifestyle or a paid firefighter at the time of the day. You almost have to pick and choose sometimes, and there's a lot of demands being placed on you for training and for time. But if you're going to pick some things, train them what they need to know. Train them what they need to know day to day. And I think, I've stolen so many ideas from you and from Sal over the years, Marchese guys, on simple drills that all of a sudden you see it, John. You've seen it. You're at the fire, and how many times? And you say it all the time. You barely ever talk on the radio. You get there sometimes. You go, but But that's it, and everybody does their job. They do their thing. They look. They just smile. They're happy, and you don't have to give pretty much any orders.
Oh, absolutely. A well-trained fire company, well-trained fire department. Most of the time, folks are able to get to the scene of a fire, and a couple of officers can give a couple of basic assignments to people on the scene, and all of a sudden everything's underway. I've gone to fires where I was the last one to get there because I was maybe the farthest away when the alarm came in, or maybe I was at a division conference or something like that. And I've gone to fires where when I got there, it was pretty much out. You know, the first two trucks had a primary search already done. The first two engine had a line long stretched attached to the hydrant, charged the pumps into the building and fighting the fire. There was either steam coming out of the windows or they were just starting the attack, and I wasn't there yet. Obviously, I'm not saying they don't need me. I'm not saying I don't need them. We're all part of the big program, but the point is a well-trained company and well-trained firefighters can initiate their basic fire suppression tactics, their basic Hearst tool operations, without somebody giving them every specific order to do so. Yeah.
Well, exactly, and we've talked about how the best way to write your policies or your guidelines for incident operations is you should be writing them where it's a what to do, not how to do. You know, this is what we do. We pull up. We're gonna, it's like we know what our strategy is going to be. You guys supply the tactics. That's how we trained you. You know, I don't have to tell a captain to tell his guys how to pull ceiling. You know, they just need, I need you guys to go into that back bedroom, check for extension. All right, Chief, we got it. And they're off and running. That's what they do if they haven't already run down that hallway already and checked it. But keep going, buddy. I mean, the whole chain thing is incredible.
Yeah, so that's, and that was the most unexpected thing that I discovered when doing that class, and I was really happy about that because, as I said, it uncovers a couple of things. It uncovers, number one, that every little fact, every little operation, every little tactic that's performed at a fire could potentially have a negative effect on somebody if it's not done properly or not done in a timely manner when it's supposed to be done. And the second important point is, just like you do, and like most of the folks that are out there doing seminars and giving presentations and lectures, the audiences that we teach to, unless we go to a specific place, and you and I have both done it where we've gone and done a chief officer's professional development program or a company officers academy somewhere, and we knew we had all company officers or all chiefs. But most of the bigger conferences you go to, you have a tremendous mix of people. You have some young firefighters with 2 years on a job, and a bunch of guys with 5 years on a job, a couple of young officers with 8 years, and maybe a couple of young chiefs with 10 or 12. So you have this gigantic, influx of people with different ranges of experience. And when you tell them about the chain, when you tell them how that every single little operation at the scene of a fire or every line of duty death can be traced back to a chain of events, and all you have to do is fix one of them, what you end up doing, and I discovered, you end up empowering everybody that's in attendance at your program, because suddenly a young guy with 3 years on a job, who up until the time he took this class figured, there's nothing I do with a fire really that has any positive impact on anybody. I'm not in a position to save a guy with 20 years. Well, yes, you are. If you're the young guy with 2 years that said, hey, Lieutenant, why don't we stretch, do you want the search rope for this fire? Oh, yeah, good idea, Billy, grab the search rope. You might be the guy that, now there will be no line of duty death at that fire, so you'll never know really that you saved somebody, but your positive professional action might save somebody. So you're empowering guys with 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years that feel, you know what, I know my job and I put 100% in every time I go to a fire, but I really don't have any impact on survival or any impact on the big picture. And really, everybody does, because all the factors are equal. All you need is one of them to happen, and the potential for firefighter fatality is there. So it's great. It really opens up everybody's eyes, and they realize, you know what, me paying attention, me being at the scene of a fire and saying something, I might be the guy that prevents something negative from happening.
And that is so dramatic. And that the point you just made. If you are on the scene, I don't care if you drove there, if you rode there, if you're carrying a pike pole, a nozzle, you got a white helmet, a black helmet, a red. It doesn't matter. You have the capability of preventing a line of duty death. You have the capability of preventing somebody from getting hurt, whether you're brand new or you have 40 years on a job. And that's just. And I'm going to nail you down here on a couple things here as we bring things to a close, John. I wanted to get you. I'm going to ask you here in a second about what you think the three biggest factors are when it comes to preventing line of duty deaths. But I wanted to mention real quick before we do that, buddy. You mentioned websites. I mentioned websites. I mean, if you're not looking at the Fool's website or the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation or Billy Goldfeder's Firefighter Close Calls or Fire Engineering's website or the Near Miss website, U.S. Fire Administration, NIOSH, International Association of Firefighters, International Association of Fire Chiefs. I've got the Texas Commission on Fire Protection doing great things. Each state pretty much has that. The International Association of Women in the Fire Service, National Volunteer Fire Council. I could go on and on and on. And with everybody having computers and the internet today, there is no reason, there is no excuse whatsoever. Guys, don't take offense. Well, I don't really care. You know what? Switch from eBay or E-Trade or from ESPN over to one of these sites once in a while. Just once in a while, go to them and look. The information is invaluable. It's right there at your fingertips, and you could be holding, at the click of a mouse, you could be holding the key to keep one of your guys alive at one of the next calls. Something, right, John?
Yeah, and
something
like
you read.
Me, I'm not Mr. Computer Extraordinaire myself, but you know what? I got that list of favorites now on my screen, and I list all those good, hot websites, those good fire websites. Like I said, whether it's the magazine websites or all these associations that you just mentioned and all these organizations, if you have them listed under your favorites, now every time you turn your computer on, whether it's to go to your email, whether it's to go and sell something on eBay, all of a sudden, boom, you look over there and you say, oh, let me jump in there real quick for a minute. Boom, and you jump on one of them, and all of a sudden you see something. So every time you go on, it's sort of a little visual reminder to jump into, pay a little attention on what's going on in the job, what's going on in the fire service, and then you'll have time to still do whatever else you want to do.
Well,
and
you can make it
do
your
that at the firehouse as well. That's good. That's time well spent in the firehouse.
Well, you can make it your homepage, right? But when you open up your browser, it'll go right to whatever homepage you have listed in there. Mm-hmm. Mine's fireengineering.com. When I turn my computer on and I go to the internet, the first page it brings up automatically is fireengineering.com. There's my newspaper for the morning.
Right.
But John, how many times? And we're going to bring things to a close here. But how many times, John? I'm not trying to embarrass you. Have you had somebody email you, call you, or walk up to you in a class? And you could tell it's going to be an emotional moment where they say, you know what, 7 years ago you taught me, I was in one of your classes, and one of the many things you taught them, just one simple thing, how to talk on the radio, how to use a Halligan, how to get themselves out of jam, how to follow, save their life. I'm not trying to bear, but I know it's happened. I've been there when guys have come up.
It absolutely has happened. And you know what, I can't remember the number of calls, and it doesn't matter how many.
Was it 50 things, John, or did they say that one thing?
Almost all of them say one thing.
Yeah.
Almost all of them say, you know what, I went to your Get Out Alive class, or I went to your room orientation class. And remember you told us you should always, put two hands. Well, if I didn't put two hands on every piece of furniture, I would have missed the couch, and that's what allowed me to get my crew out, and I just want to thank you, And it turns, sometimes it comes down to one little technique, one little skill that you taught them in a whole day of training that they come back and say, That's what I used to save my life or to save somebody's life in my crew. Yeah.
Oh,
very rewarding, right?
Oh, buddy, it absolutely is. Like I said, I'm not trying to be. It's a fact of life. I watch people come up to you all the time and go, Chief Salka, what you taught me saved my life, or one of our people. Or I've read the emails too. It's one little thing, and I guess the point is, and no disrespect to you or I or any of our brothers or sisters we teach with, that could be any lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, deputy chief, rookie firefighter, anybody could be walking to someone else going, 6 shifts ago when you brought up you printed off that page off the internet and said, here, read this at the kitchen table.
Right.
And that little blip of information, I remember that, and it helped me get out of a jam. So everybody has the ability to impact people.
Well, you don't have to be a big national fire instructor or writing for fire engineering every month to do that. You could be a lieutenant in the West Nowhereville Fire Department, and if you go online and you see some valid things from NIOSH, or you see something on the IAFF website, or you go to the National Forum Firefighters website, and they come up with something new, hey, look at this new little drill you can practice. You print it, you throw it in your bag, you bring it to work the next time you go to the firehouse, or maybe you're in the firehouse that night. You print it and you bring it down to dinner and say, hey, guys, look at this, and let's try this tomorrow morning, or let's try this after dinner. And suddenly you're in a position where you're handing out information that people can use to save their lives. Everybody's in that seat. Yeah.
Well, and how many times, and I'm going to throw this out there for our listeners right now, John, is people say, how can I make a difference? What can I do? I'm just so-and-so. You know what? Here's something. There's an email out there at a website. The website's the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Email Ron Cernicki and say, what can I do? How can I help? What can I do? How can I make a difference? Whether it's in my own department, can I help with a program? Can I help get the word out? What can I do in my own area to make a difference? And the more people we get doing that, maybe we will. Now, let's finish things up, John. 3 big factors, and I always try to do the 3 thing. 3 big things. What are the 3 biggest, let's say, preventative options, measures, thoughts, theories that can help us keep our people safe from being injured or killed? What are the three big things that can help us keep our folks alive?
That's a tough question because there's
I know,
way
there's so
more than
many.
three. Right. The first thing that always comes to my mind is training. Everybody's got to be training. And you know what? You said this a million times at your seminars. I've heard you say it. The people that you've worked with before you even knew me were telling you this years ago, and I'm telling you now. Training is the most important activity that anybody can do. You know what? Experience is wonderful. I just wrote a little article on experience, on what experience is. And experience is valuable stuff, but you got to sort of sit around and wait for experience to happen. And you got to be somewhere where stuff is going on. Otherwise, you don't get too much experience. But training is in your power. Training is under your control. So if you decide, I'm Lieutenant Smith, I'm going to train my crew every day when I go to work. They might complain about it a little bit initially because they get their regular routine down that they don't want to get disrupted, but eventually they'll see how valuable the training is. And you know what? If you get into a routine of doing that, you will be noticeably better at what you do, at every fire, at every emergency, at every extrication call, and people will notice it. They'll say, wow, that engine 2 with that Lieutenant Smith is a pretty sharp crew. Yeah, I know they're sharp, Lou, because every time I work over there, they train every afternoon or they train every evening. And I can give you a million stories about Bobby Morris and Rescue 1 bringing his guys out at midnight from Rescue 1 in Manhattan, bringing them out at midnight to go do a roof rope operation on a roof of a vacant building at midnight in the dark, and he doesn't let them use flashlights. Why? Because that's how it's going to be. They're going to be doing roof ropes at midnight, and there's going to be no lights up there. So, you know what? We could take that situation and talk about a million different places and a million different tactics.
I remember being at Sal Marchese's firehouse, 142 truck in Queens, and at 2:00 in the morning, we're doing a handcuff now through the pole hole. I mean, with guys that are training. I mean, it's incredible.
Right.
So, training number one. I know you've mentioned, I'm going to steal one from you because you mentioned earlier it's got to be the leadership thing.
Right.
That's got to play into one of the top three.
Absolutely.
Is our leadership role. And close things out for me here. Talk about responsibility. I mean, if we're talking about training, we're talking about leadership. Give me John Salka's 60-second view on, or you take as much time as you need, buddy, but on responsibility and how it affects us.
I mean, you know what? Responsibility is a big word. Responsibility means that's stuff that you're supposed to be doing. That's stuff that you're supposed to be taking care of. That's a job that you've been assigned to do, whether you're a company officer, whether you're a firefighter, whether you're a probie. I mean, probies in my fire department are pretty busy guys. They do have a lot of responsibility. Not less, actually more. They're pretty busy. And whatever your responsibility is, you got to take it seriously, and you got to pay attention to it. You got to put some time into it. You got to be thinking about it. You and I talk about if you chase two rabbits, both will escape. We talk about that phrase in our leadership class, and it's true. It's about paying attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to what you're doing and where you are. If you're a volunteer firefighter and your alarm goes off, your plectron sounds, and you jump in your private car and drive to the firehouse and get on that first engine or that first truck, pay attention to what you're doing. Or even if you're down at the volunteer firehouse for drill night on Monday nights or Wednesday nights, for that hour or two or three that you're there that evening, you don't have to talk about the horse races or your new Hemi in your car out front or any of that, which there'll be plenty of time to do. But pay attention to the drill and pay attention to the equipment check that you're doing that night and to the bottles on your SCBAs. And if you're in a career fire department, when you go to work a 24-hour shift or a day or a night shift, you know, for God's sakes, pay attention to what you're doing and immerse yourself in whatever your job duties are, whether it's checking the rig in the morning, whether it's washing the rig and you're a young firefighter, whether it's a company officer running a drill. You know, take serious your responsibilities and make sure you get the job done, because in the fire service, a lot of people are depending on you. It's not just you, particularly as you go up the ranks. Once you start to get into the company officer ranks, now you got a whole crew of people whose survivability and safety is dependent on you taking your job seriously. Yeah.
Well, and John, one of your messages you sent the other day in Fort Worth, or a couple of weeks ago here now, it was if you see something, say something. And at this fire we had the other day, we had a wall separation in the back. I mean, pretty much when we got there, and the captain off the truck company, as he was doing his 360, and I was talking with Eddie Buchanan about this the other day, he right away jumped on the radio where, sometimes we just, that's not going to be a big deal. The whole point you made of, if you see something, say something. I don't care how minor you think it is. If you think it's important enough, you got something that's going to affect somebody's safety, then say it.
Absolutely.
And it worked for us.
You may see something that looks minor, but the fact that it looks minor and you noticed it, the fact that you noticed it at all means you should be saying something about it. You shouldn't notice something, look at it, evaluate it, and then say nothing. The fact that you noticed it, you should say, truck rear assignment to command. I'm around the rear of the building. Looks like a couple of bricks fell off the top parapet wall. Looks pretty good for now, but a couple of bricks are missing. 10-4. Now everybody knows there's a little situation back there. Is it serious? Maybe not, but at least we know.
Well, John, I can't thank you enough, buddy. I wish we could do this for an 8-hour program. Maybe we ought to talk to Peter and Bobby about that, about doing some more training on the website. But as we close things out here, pal, and again, one more time, I can't thank you enough for being on the show again. You're my buddy, and we get a ton of emails every time you're on. Good stuff. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, we always do this. They want to reach out to you, email you, whether it's to come out and teach one of your many programs. You and I've said it before. This company officer stuff we're doing, I'll say to the listeners, if you want to talk about it, give us a call or shoot us an email.
That is great stuff. The company officer stuff is really popular stuff.
We are, and that's everything from tactics and strategy to, we could give you, there's a whole long list of things when it comes to
anybody out there, career departments or even volunteer departments, but career departments, I don't want to say more, but a lot of career departments, people get promoted to lieutenant or captain or first-line supervisor, and they just get a different color shirt and move on. And Rick and I have put together, based on both of us doing 30 years in the fire department, put together a great company officer program that, and lots of places have no company officer training at all and are looking for it. They're hungry for it. Well, we have it. So, and we think it's a great program that'll help you be a fantastic officer and keep your crew real safe.
And you know what? We're having the time of our life doing it because the energy in the room is just incredible. We're having a ball with it.
Yep.
But John, if somebody want to get a hold of you,
actually, I got a brand new email. It's chiefsalka@yahoo.com.
That's easy enough.
You can send me any of your questions, complaints, or requests on that, and I'll be happy to. I just about answer them all. I can't remember too many that I haven't answered, but send me whatever you got, and we'll talk.
Well, and I obviously I've got the work one that people try to get to. I did the same thing, John. Make it easy. I've got Chief Lasky at yahoo.com, or you can get a hold of me at Rick at prideandownership.com. Keep the emails coming, the ideas, the thoughts, the comments. Great things going on out there. John, hopefully, we'll see another 4% or 8% decrease in injuries next year, and maybe that'll be the trend. We'll start seeing things.
It would be nice.
Be controlled. So, thanks again, buddy. Hey, to everybody out there, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. And as we always end the show, two very, very important words: be safe.